Welcome to the Talented Learning Show podcast series, episode 104. I'm your host, independent learning tech analyst John Lay. Today I'm joined by Melissa Kruminas, Senior Director of Learning at Docebo, to talk about something that's especially close to home for any learning system vendor, customer education done by the people who build customer education platforms. You can find more of our fiercely independent content at talentedlearning.com. Welcome back, listeners. On this show, I'm fortunate to interview the world's leading experts in extended enterprise learning from both the vendor and the practitioner sides of the fence. And today's guest sits squarely at the intersection of both. And these are my favorite type of guests because Docebo is one of the most recognized LMS solutions in the world for partner and customer education and employee education. And Melissa leads the team responsible for educating Docebo's own customers using the very same platform that they sell. It's the classic eat your own dog food, drink your own champagne, practice what you preach story. And a model example of how a learning technology company can run customer education as a product, and really how any technology company can run customer education as a product, a growth engine, and a community builder all at the same time. From launching paid certifications to virtual labs and different types of ILT training to self-paced training and certifications to connected learning with onboarding, retention, and even advocacy. Melissa and her team are showing what it really means to make customer learning strategic and measurable in technology companies. Wow, it's going to be a great episode. Melissa, welcome to the Talented Learning Show. It's sure great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to chat about learning today.
All right. All right. Well, this is one of my favorite things. As you know, when I started Talented Learning almost 13 years ago now, it was all about bringing customer education to light and trying to highlight that in the marketplace. And so, one of the byproducts of that is as the learning system providers got great at customer education, they become the standard that their customers look to on how they should do customer education. And it's really created an interesting dynamic in the marketplace where leading learning providers such as Docebo are now the model of how to do customer education. It's amazing how it came full circle, and you are that circle, as it turns out, of how this all works and how you think about educating Docebo's customers. And so this is a fascinating episode for me as it all comes together. And we had a prep call about a month ago to talk about this, and I was just floored by all the cool things that you're doing as really best practices. And so can't wait to share that out to the audience. But with that being said, in case some of our audience has been living under a peach basket, can you take can you take a second and tell us, give us an update on who Docebo is and your role in the organization? We'll start there.
Sure. My name is Melissa Kruminas. I am the Senior Director of Learning at Docebo, which is a learning technology platform. And I oversee both our customer education team as well as I have adopted a few months ago our friends over in L&D as well. So we're all together now.
Wow, neat. And so Docebo is worldwide, customers everywhere. What, 3,500 customers? So it's a lot of different organizations using your application for employee, for customer, for partner, or really any combination of those audiences. And so, the majority of your customers are thinking about customer and external education almost every day. But you just said right there that you have both customer education and internal employees. That seems kind of odd. Tell us about that and how that evolved.
Well, funny enough, my last two organizations, I had global enablement. So I had sales enablement, partner enablement, customer education, learning and development. And so, it naturally can go together. I was at a former Docebo customer and came over to Docebo. And I don't want to say I took a step back, I took a step in and really focused on the customer education piece. But when we hired our very first CLO, so our Chief Learning Officer, early this year, he wanted to bring together this center of excellence model. And it's really interesting because not only is there value in, when we talked before, I told you I hate the word synergy, but the synergy, right? Like the operational component of being more effective and more efficient. But there's also this idea that our customers do what we do. And so many of our customers are doing customer education. They are doing partner enablement and sales enablement and learning and development. And so why not share our own journey with them, and also highlight their journeys too, so we can learn from each other?
Wow, cool. So what are the you're doing a bunch of major things. Well, let's start with one step higher. So you tell us about your governance council and your strategy on and how you pulled that together. As that's probably the first step for any customer organization is to start thinking holistically at that stage. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so we do actually have two, even though learning and development is with the team as well as customer education, the cross-functional partners that they work with are not always the same. And so your L&D team historically partners with your HR department, right? They're looking at employee pulse surveys, they're looking at Glassdoor reviews and um, talent development paths and those sorts of things. And then on the customer education side, we're partnering uniquely with product. We're partnering with product marketing, with customer success, with our professional services team. So, and I'm sure I'm forgetting so many more. And so for me, it was really about having the right people in the room for a couple of reasons. So, number one, we need these people as partners because I've never met a learning team that has more people in budget than they need. So, we definitely need these partners to help. From a curation over creation, we also need to understand what's going on in the business so that we're prioritizing in a way that is aligned with what is best for Docebo and for our customers. And then finally, I would say so that when things change, we can all align and be supportive of that change. And I know there's nobody who's gone in and, you say this is the plan and the plan never changes, right? And so when that plan changes, instead of being on this island alone, you have these peers who are really there to help say, hey, we understand and support that decision, and here's why. And so I think those are the three things for me that really made governance not only helpful, but absolutely necessary to our ongoing success.
A lot of organizations think it's really laborious to do that. How often do you, just practically, how often do you bring this, let's focus on the customer side,
Yeah.
that particular governance team together, and what kind of commitment do you need from those other departments to make this work? How'd you approach that?
Well, I definitely bit off more than I could chew when we started. I was like,
I
we're
have a
going to do
habit of
this
that.
every single month and we're going to do all these things. And then the reality of life set in. And we implemented OKRs within our business this year. So, huge shout out to our chief of staff. That was such a massive undertaking. And those change on a quarterly basis. And so, what we decided to do is we've implemented the governance or steering committee in the middle of the quarter.
Uh,
So that kind of, your OKRs give you a check-in of like, these are the priorities for that quarter holistically. And then in the middle of that, we're able to do a little bit of a snapshot and say, okay, are we still on the right track? Do we need to pivot a little bit? So we do come together quarterly. We do ask that in between those times, we get updates from the members that are on the committee. We ask them to attend. It is 1 hour. We could do one day, honestly, but it is 1 hour once a quarter. And
mhm.
they report some things beforehand. We also look at whatever big rocks or initiatives that we have together. We report on the metrics. So we make sure, let's not work on something for 3 months if we're not seeing it actually making a difference for the business. Or maybe something's changed and we don't need to work on that thing anymore.
Wow, cool. And is it working?
And I think it's working really well. I mean, I'll give you an example of one that we had not too long ago. We are changing the way that we activate our customers. And so our onboarding model has changed. And we were working on updating our onboarding content just based on it needed to be updated, right? When I first came in, there was an established customer education team. So I wasn't building from scratch here at Docebo, but the content was a little bulky, if I'm being
Hmm.
gracious there.
Easy to do.
Yeah, and it was one of those, oh, well, they need to know this and they need to know this and just add this and add this and add this. But if if it's not relevant, then what happens is those 5 minutes of relevance nobody ever gets to because they have all this other stuff that they have to do. And so that was really the starting point. And what we found was that our professional services team ended up changing halfway through this project the way that they were going to be doing onboarding, which meant we had to I don't want to say completely, but definitely stop what we were doing and revisit what we were doing to consider what do we actually need during that onboarding phase and is it different? And it turns out it was.
Well, great example. Great example. Otherwise, you could have just ran down that path and everybody found it out the hard way, a few months down the road, because you're going to find out either way, but you found it out in advance. And that's probably the biggest, so you could change course on the fly. That's pretty cool. So one of your big initiatives here over, well, I don't know, you'll have to tell us, last year, I think, is the education as a product. What does that mean? And tell us all about it.
Sure. I think it can mean a few things. For me, when I was hired to come onto Docebo, I was hired to monetize training.
Hmm.
So we do offer complimentary training through Docebo University. But when I was initially hired, I was hired to monetize an ILT function, to monetize training, which I think you and I have talked about has kind of gone full circle, I think, over the last couple of probably decades,
Hmm.
really. And so that's part of it. And we did that. And we can talk more about that in a moment. But I also think you have to approach education as a product, even if you don't sell it. So, education as a product, I always say if you're the director of education, you are the product marketing manager for education at your company. And you have to understand the value proposition. You have to understand what the competition is doing. You have to understand your customer personas and what amount of time they have and how they need or want to receive information. When I say education as a product, that's what I mean is really thinking about it as a go to market motion and understanding you can't just release a course and put it in an LMS and hope and pray that somebody's going to go to it. It just doesn't work that way. Sadly, we wish that it did. And then on the monetized side of the house, really what had happened is I was brought in to monetize ILT. And at the time, Docebo was releasing a feature. So we have an e-commerce module where people can sell training
Hmm.
subscriptions. They can do, one-off, whatever they want to do there. But we were introducing a feature called training credits. And I'm a big fan of drinking our own champagne. And so I wanted to figure out how we could leverage our own product, both to demonstrate its use, but also to give feedback. That's one of the really cool things about working in a technology company is we get to provide feedback to our partner teams so that they can continue to improve the product. I think of us as customer zero.
Hmm.
And so we ended up launching learning credits. And I know I said training credits is a feature. Learning credits is the product that we sell from a Docebo University perspective, just to differentiate between the two. And I don't have exact numbers in front of me, but I will tell you it is within the seven digits in the first year that we
Nice.
launched, which is amazing. I will never repeat that in my career, let's be honest. But I'm very, very proud of what the team did.
Wow. Cool. Cool. And so what operationally, what's that mean then? So you bring on a new client and you give them just part of that contract is a certain number of credits that they're paying for, and then they can cash those in any way they want. Like operationally, what's going on there?
So we decided to go to market in three primary channels, so to speak. So
Hmm.
one of those channels is we have a premium support offering for our customers. And that premium support offering comes with a certain number. At the time that I joined, it came with certification credits. And I really wanted to transition those to learning credits to provide more flexibility to the customer. So they can use a learning credit to go take a certification exam, or they can use it on one of our ILT programs. And then we have different tiers within that as well. And of course, all of that went to a pricing committee and legal review. Like logistically, there's a lot more that goes into launching a product than just creating the product. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. So that's
Hmm.
one avenue. The second avenue was using our e-commerce feature directly within Docebo University. So someone can go in, use a credit card, purchase a credit, and redeem that for a certification or an instructor-led training. Most of our
Hmm.
on-demand content is still completely complimentary, so we don't charge really for that today. And then the third option, which opened up some new avenues as well, was being able to use an order form. So we do have a SKU within our CRM where it's a single SKU regardless of channel through which it's sold, although we can see that. And that allows us to report out on the number that have been sold, the value, what's been redeemed. And I believe the last report I pulled, we were at almost 25% account penetration. So about a quarter of our customers have at least one learning credit that they are using.
Hmm. Well, that's great. That's great. And so, if you can access all of the training on demand for free, I'd imagine some companies still prefer just to go down that route. Would
Yeah.
that be fair? Yeah, and just do it that way. And so you're talking about, in this case, training the administrators or whoever's interacting with the application can do it that way. But I'm surprised that there's so much ILT. Why do you think that is? What's that look like? And you know, yeah, why haven't you shifted away from that? It must be bringing some value, concrete value.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have ILT and then we have some hybrid learning opportunities too.
Hmm.
I think, our customers are learning professionals themselves, and I think they crave personal development, they crave training. I know you and I talked about how many of our programs are accredited by both ATD and SHRM.
Mm.
And so, as learning professionals, when they come to our instructor led training or our complimentary webinars or our DU training camp at our Inspire conference, they're not only learning about our platform, but they're also learning about how to be a better learning practitioner. And they're earning for their own professional development continuous education credit. So, I think that's a big part of why it's been so successful.
Neat, neat. Well, let's dig into that. So that accreditation, part of it is, what you just said there, helping teach the professionals. Any other reason uh, to get accredited? For like your customer standpoint, should they get accredited? Like, what else did it bring you?
Oh, that's a great question. For us, we've used it in a few ways. I think one is, customer education is a growth engine. And if you're not thinking whether you charge for it or not, it is a growth engine. And
Hmm.
so for us, I know, so for example, in the L&D use case, we have multiple use cases within Docebo. So membership training, partner enablement, sales enablement, customer ed, L&D, and on and on and on. And so in our L&D use case, we know that the economic buyer for that use case is typically going to be a higher level leader, either in talent development based on the size of the organization or HR. And so we also know or knew that 51% of VPs of HR are SHRM accredited, either SHRM CP or SHRM SCP. And so by becoming accredited, we're providing free continuous education to individuals that have to maintain that. So why not open the door so that they're learning to be better learning professionals, but they're also associating that with our organization, so with Docebo. And I've done something similar in other organizations. I worked previously at a company where we led, it was an enterprise asset management solution, and we were partnering with local technical schools to be able to educate on our software their students on how to use this asset management software. And so when those people later become the economic buyers at their companies, they already have a positive, hopefully positive association with that technology. And so it no longer feels like something new or intimidating, but it hopefully feels like they're coming home to something familiar.
Oh, that's really cool. So a best practice out there, listeners, would be to hunt down the certifications in your particular industry. To your professionals, the engineers and, your professional need continuing education credits and get it accredited by that organization. And you could do the same thing as a long-term top of the funnel strategy, in addition to the immediate learning going on. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And so you're letting grass grow under your feet, I see, because you also then focused on recreating the certification program in general, updating it, modifying it, making it more valuable. Can you tell us about what it was and what it was lacking and what you changed
Sure.
and
I
how
mean,
it's working?
yeah, I would say hats off to the people who the certification that we have, our Docebo Pro certification, was in place before I came.
Mm,
And I say that not to shift any blame, but to give credit where credit is due. They did a phenomenal job on this certification. But what we also found was it hadn't been updated since 2023. And
mm,
so when I came in, I was like, okay, we needed to update the certification at a minimum because we've had a lot of product innovation in that time and it's changed. So the first thing we did is we did a SME analysis, went back through, took out questions that were no longer relevant, added in things based on the new features, et cetera. But what also we noticed, or that I sort of noticed really as a missing component, is we didn't have an educational path to help people get to that certification.
mm.
And that's not as uncommon and as you might expect. It's also not necessarily a bad practice. We look at companies like Salesforce, their first certifications were what, like 2008. And then Trailhead, I think, launched in 2014. So it's not uncommon to have certification as long as you have source materials, primary resources, so knowledge base, whatever. You don't have to necessarily have like a curriculum. But when you're going for something that's so highly technical as Docebo Pro, it was intimidating. Learning professionals in general are not necessarily super technical professionals. And so it almost was something that they were scared to attack. So that's one component. We were like, okay, how do we actually help them get comfortable? And my new North Star and what I want to think about in 2026 is how long from closed one to when they get a Docebo Pro. Because we know that customers that have a Docebo Pro have 21 times the expansion ARR of a customer that does not have a Docebo Pro
Wow,
certified admin. Now, I don't want to
amazing.
discourage anyone who is listening that is a Docebo customer. We want you to come get certified. But we knew we needed to help. We didn't have the account penetration that we wanted. And so that's where we started to look at, okay, at the same time, we were making these changes to the way that we were onboarding our customers. And it used to be, again, this is when I was like, it didn't come, this is not a neat process where it was like, here's this linear thing. I'm giving you the real behind the covers thing. And so at the same time, we found out from our steering committee that we were redoing the way that we were onboarding customers. And so we previously had more of a model where it was a lot of like education and the customer doing a lot of the configuration. But if the customer doesn't understand why the platform works the way that it does, they weren't always making the best decisions for their long-term progress. And so now we're partnering much closer with our customers to make sure that we're helping them with that. But that means they don't only need to understand how the product works and where to click. They also need to understand the business of learning. And so we have three levels of users in Docebo. We have our learners, our actual users. We have our super admin, which is like our Docebo pros. And then in the middle, we have power users. And so power users are sort of like mini admins that you can give certain restricted authority to help manage like a decentralized learning function where maybe you want this department assigns these things, or you want your CSMs to be able to run reports on their clients and see what they're learning, that sort of thing. So that was all happening at the same time. And so we said, well, okay, what a new admin needs to know is really a stepping stone for how we get to Docebo Pro. And again, I'm giving you the messy here. But let's say I'm an IT professional and I really don't care at all around, some do, but maybe I don't care at all about why I should set up branches and groups within Docebo. Typically, branches are hierarchy, groups are more attribute based. Um, but if I can teach that person that segmented user experiences lead to better business outcomes, then they are going to start to care about the way that they set up that hierarchy. So those branches and those groups. And so for us, we brought those three pieces together and we said, what are the things that everyone needs to know? And we call those Docebo Essentials. That is out in Docebo University. It is complimentary. It is in beta today. I say beta, it's in some pilot testing. The middle part, and then we had the Docebo Pro, remember we updated that, but we needed to get the sort of the gap between the value prop sort of and the technical know-how. And we also wanted to be able to make sure that people can do the thing, not just answer the questions. And so what we ended up doing is we started with our ILT program that we had launched because it had a huge capstone at the end where they had to demonstrate that they could build a platform from scratch. And now the next step for us is converting that into an on-demand experience as well. So it sort of all came together beautifully, but it was a very messy process of figuring out through trial and error that we were getting it wrong. And so that would probably be my biggest lesson, I would say, for anybody going through the journey of whether that's customer education or L&D, is you just have to be willing to get it wrong in order to get it right later.
Wow. Wow. Great advice. Great advice. This time goes so fast, like always. Let's get the measurement. What do you care about?
Um, that's a funny question. I will say on the customer education side, I really measure the impact of what we're doing in one of three ways. So one of those is cost deflection. So are we reducing support tickets? Our ILT program, we just had the team run the program stats recently. We had a customer who in the previous year had 107 tickets with us. And we were like, we need to send them to ILT. I don't even remember if we charged them, honestly, but we were like, okay, they need practice. They need the education. They've had 100% reduction. They have now, in the year following their ILT, they have had 0 tickets.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, so when we think about cost deflection, you think about the cost associated with each of those support tickets. That's one of the things that we're measuring. Number 2 is that direct revenue attribution or that direct revenue generation. And so, that's where we get more investment when it comes to budget time. And I can say, hey, we're bringing in these 7-digit numbers. I can get hopefully, we'll talk to finance about that next week, but hopefully get a little bit more money.
Be a lot
And then,
easier than bringing in nothing.
yeah, exactly. And then I would say lastly is really around revenue attribution. So again, knowing that our certified admins are expanding at 21x, knowing that individuals who attend our DU Live complimentary webinar series, we see, I don't remember the exact number on that one, but we see a multi-million-dollar pipeline coming out of those within 6 months. So there's some really powerful ways that we can measure impact, but it all goes back to how it's impacting the business for sure.
And did you come up with those metrics, or were those metrics bestowed upon you from above? Curious.
They're kind of ones I've just always used, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I'm sure some of them, I don't want to take credit for anything that I didn't. I'm sure some of them were bestowed upon me. But in general, those are things I was brought in to launch, and I think I brought in most of those as well.
Outstanding. What's next on the horizon? What are you going to do?
Goodness. We're doing a lot of testing with our own product. So similar to the e-commerce. And so Docebo is, I don't know how public this is just yet. So safe harbor notice, it could change. We're testing out, we're doing an alpha internally for our companion tool. So what that is, it's sort of a web extension browser. And so now let's say you're in your OKR software, you could have a Docebo like a little pop-up, a course that you can access directly within that flow of work. So those are some of the fun things that we're testing out. And of course, AI, skill development, those sorts of things.
Wow. Wow. Great. Great. Sounds fun. Sounds fun. All right. Last question. And you were touching on this just a little bit about your advice question. If you could go back, do you think that you could have done anything to make it less messy? You said about how it's messy and you're putting that together. Is that just the nature of how it was, and that's just the nature of how it is, or is there something that you would do differently if you had a wave of magic wand that might have made that others might learn from? Curious.
That's a great question. I will say that I will take a lot of that on myself. I think I'm not a micromanager by any measure. And I tend to say measure by outcomes. So I'll assign work by outcomes. I'm like, hey, this is what I want by this timeline, and this is why it's important and how we're measuring impact on the business.
Hmm.
And I think I underestimated the amount of change that this was from the team's previous leadership and what they had been asked to do in the past. Because in the
Hmm.
past, a lot of the education was really, here's where you click in the software. And I call it value-led product supported education. So we're leading with the outcomes that people get. And then, oh yeah, by the way, this is how Docebo supports you in that. So if I had it to do over again, probably more of a change management plan for my own internal teams to help them be more open to change. And not that they weren't open to change, but I don't think I prepared them properly for the change that this would be. So that would be my biggest lesson learned, I think.
Outstanding. Sage advice. Melissa Kruminas, Senior Director of Learning at Docebo. Thanks, Melissa, so much for stopping by the Talented Learning Show today and sharing what you're up to and the success you're having and challenges you're having and how you're overcoming them and really trying to be the model of customer education, among other things, but customer education for all your clients that are using your platform and solution for customer and partner enablement and education. So that's all really great. We didn't even get one last thing. We're late. One last thing. Tell us real quick about that advocacy thing. I wanted to ask about that.
Oh, yeah, you had asked us about so our
Like 30
certification.
seconds or less, what you're doing
30
there.
seconds
So
or less.
cool.
So our certification program has been so successful that not only are people who are certified advocates for us, but our champions are now able to redeem points in our Champions Hub to purchase a certification. And this has been amazing because not every organization is willing to invest in getting their team certified.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's great. The fourth stage of the customer life cycle, and really enabling that to help drive more things to the top of the funnel and to impact those best business metrics in the three ways that you described. So all great stuff. Melts my heart here talking about customer education as such, and see how much it's grown in the last 10 years, the last 20 years for sure. And it's nice to see you leading it. Melissa, thanks very much for stopping by. Hope you have a good day. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode. I know you thought this was a great one because it was. And we hope to see you on the next. You can find more of our fiercely independent information at talentedlearning.com. And of course, you can go to docebo.com and see all this in action. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next.